Hiya, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. My guest today is Grant Cameron. Grant is a renowned figure in the field of ufology, known for his extensive research and publication on the UFOs and connection to government policies. Can we please welcome Grant to the show? Hello there.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate your taking time to talk to me.
Oh, he's great, mate. I'll tell you. Um, what inspired you to write Beyond Managing Magic to land a plane, and what does the phrase land a plane mean in the context of UFO disclosure?
Well, it basically had to do with a message I seem to have gotten where you get sort of depressed when you're sitting there waiting for something to happen in UFOs or to get the answer or whatever. And at that moment, I sort of got a message that was given to me that said, "Don't worry, we know how to land the plane." And I've sort of believed that for a long time, and that's the idea that the phenomena that we're dealing with, I call it the intelligence, knows what it's doing. It may have done this on 1,000 different planets before. It knows exactly what to do and what to do next. And that if you look at a lot of the stuff that the phenomena is doing, it's called what I call the theory of wow. It's just doing these really weird things to try to get your attention and to get you to start looking at the world more seriously and extended view of the world and realize it's not the world you think it is. It's much more non-physical, non-local, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, than it is physical. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get this message across from us, and they know exactly how to do it. Because you have not only have the government covering up, you have the phenomena covering up as well. They've anytime they want to land and tell us what's going on, they'll do that. But they're not. They're just sort of like a parent. They're not writing your homework tests for you. They're not doing any of that kind of stuff. It's up to us to figure it out. They're just giving us little breadcrumbs to guide us as to where to go next.
Yeah, I can understand that. At this point in your research career, what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of UFO phenomena?
Absolutely, good question. The most misunderstood connection is that the phenomena is not as real, as physical as people think it is. As Jim Semivan, the former head of covert ops for the CIA, said, just because you've got bodies and crafts does not mean you know what you're dealing with. The big thing that the government has known since 1950, the Canadian government was told by the Americans, and this is in a top secret Canadian government memo, that other things might be associated with the flying saucers, such as mental phenomena. That is critically important because consciousness is a major component of the UFO phenomena. It's being totally ignored by the vast majority, probably 99% of ufologists, who basically just want to hear a good story. They want to hear like ghost stories, UFO stories, see videos, that sort of thing. And this phenomena is going to be, as I say, it's going to be a lot less material than you think it is. It's going to be a lot less physical than you think it is, and it's not going to have a hint of capitalism. It's a hive mentality that's we're dealing with here, and that's absolutely number one. We have missed the boat. We're out of the boat. We're in the water, and we're sitting there waiting for something to happen, and we misunderstand the idea that. For example, I'm just writing a book now on a crossover between near-death experience and UFOs, and it's unbelievable the different things that agree between the two in terms of things like seeing in 360 degrees, dead people being involved, the people getting the message or being shown everything in the universe and then not being allowed to bring it back. There's just so many, and you start to wonder, are we talking about the same thing here? Because you sort of assume that near-death experience is a sort of a spiritual phenomena and the UFO is a physical phenomena. No, I would say that when it comes down to it, the consciousness is going to be very important. And that is why the American government now, I take the position, I may be wrong, but I take the position that they have no clue what's going on. They have videos. They know they got a phenomena. They have bodies, they have crafts, but beyond that, they have not a clue as to how these crafts operate or where they're from. And that's why you'll always hear government statements where they will say, we have no proof of extraterrestrials. That's exactly right, because this may not be extraterrestrials. So if you take a look at what Tom DeLonge said when he was encountered the top government officials, they said it was the Cold War and we found a life form, and they told him to call the beings the others, not to use the word extraterrestrial, because we do not know where these things are from, and we do not have a clue how these things are operated. And I was even looking this morning. There was a Jim Semivan, James Lakatsky, who ran the big government program for the U.S. government. He was asked, "Is this like the equivalent of going from sticks to stones to microprocessors?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And that far advanced from what we've got. So anybody who tells you that the government is flying these things around, maybe they are. I will bet my bottom dollar they ain't flying these things around. This is very advanced technology that they're looking at, and that's what the secrecy is about. They don't want to announce that they have no clue and they have no control over this thing, and these things can do whatever they want. That's not a statement that any president wants to put out.
If disclosure is happening gradually, who is controlling the pace of the process?
There would be people inside the government, like Jim Semivan, I guess, is a prime example. He's always very upset that he had the beings in his room when he was still at the CIA in 1992 with his wife and him. And he always talks about the fact that he's very angry because they violated his human rights. And that leads to the question, well, does the CIA ask for permission when they go into another country and steal stuff, or do whatever they want to do? And so he's very upset about the fact that they violated his human rights. He didn't have any control over this thing. And yet when it came right down to it, he's the guy behind, is the guy behind the New York Times article. They were going to drop this whole thing under Hillary Clinton, and then Hillary Clinton lost the election. But what happened was Jim Semivan, and he's told this publicly, is he went to the government, to the three-letter agencies, to all the top three-letter agency guys, and said, you guys had your chance to drop this thing. You didn't do it. We're going to drop this thing. We are not going to release classified material, but you guys had a chance. We're gonna disclose this thing. And that's what happened. They put the New York Times article out, and if it had not been for Jim Semivan's beings in his room violating his human rights, we would not have disclosure today, because it was Jim Semivan that was behind the New York Times article and the plan to get this disclosure. So there are people in the government who are upset with what's going on, who want the story put out, and you have intelligence agencies that need to get ahead of the story. So what you want to do is if you have a story that I want to control, it doesn't help me to go and kill you, because then the next person pops up and it sort of confirms that there's something to it. So what they want to do is for, say, example, Bob, you say, oh, I'm going to do a movie on UFOs in the CIA. So then I hear about that and I go, hey, Bob, you ever been to the CIA? You're doing this documentary and you ever been to the CIA? And you go, no. Would you like to see the CIA? We could take you through, and then you would have a better idea of what you're writing about. And what they do is almost like somebody trying to get money on the street. They guide you in the direction they want you to go. And that's what they're doing. And so they have a number of operations. I was there with the Bill Moore times when the MJ-12 document was released, and all this stuff was going on in the 1980s and 1990s. They were releasing what was called the New Majestic 12 documents. There's 3,700 pages of documents. Then Tom DeLonge came along, and they started giving Tom DeLonge stuff. And I was actually part of an operation. I can't really talk about it because I was sort of cut out of it. But there's another operation going on where they're trying to drop material. And there was 3 people involved. I was one of them while this thing began. And it's the same old story. There's a bunch of people in the government, and they're upset with the policy, and they want to get this stuff out. And we got 2 former CIA directors and the Secretary of State, and name a bunch of all these different people that are in this group, and we're going to let you in the group, and they're going to tell you what's going on. And then the filmmaker is going to put a film out. And so this is the same operation. They keep running the same operation over and over and over again. And that's the idea, where it's like there's a guy by the name of Chase Brannon, who was a CIA guy. He wrote a book called Christos Conundrum, which talked about how the CIA dealt with various UFO issues. And he said, and this is the bottom line, he said, if you want a good read the book. If you want to learn something, read between the lines.
I like that. I know you've studied decades of UFO history. What role do you think the intelligent community plays in shaping the public narrative?
Absolutely critical. That people don't realize that when you have a top secret operation, say UFOs are a black op, waived unacknowledged special access program. Um, According to Eric Davis, and he's been in the classified world, and I use his figure. He said that there's 10 times as much money spent on security as there is on the program. So people don't realize this. They think they can go walking in and get some whistleblower to tell them a story or whatever. They don't realize the massive amount of money that is being used by intelligence to drive a story, to get us to go down the right road. And the one I always laugh at is the people. There's a lot of people who have believed this idea that there's a worldwide Illuminati who's behind this whole thing. Like Donald Trump is be controlled by somebody, and it's like give your head a shake. And so the reason I say that they want you to believe that there's a dark Illuminati running this show is because then you're down a dark alley in France for the rest of your life looking for this Illuminati that you're never going to find. They just misdirect you and send you off in a different direction. And so every government has their own issue where they deal with it on their own case basis. And the United States is the top guy is the president of the United States. And I say the reason that they have this operation going on to sort of cover the story is the fact that they really don't understand it. And you don't want to put your cards on the table for the Russians and the Chinese to tell them what you know. Because once you say this thing's for real and we've got crafts and bodies, then everybody starts identifying the locations, and then the Chinese satellites and the Russian satellites all change course and they all start to go over top of and watch what you're doing. And you can't really hide it at that point. So it's this idea, we really don't know what's going on, and that it's real. The phenomenon is real. And the fact that there's no evidence, they've made the same claim all the time, but it would be the very high levels of intelligence. A lot of people in intelligence would just have a job that they do, but the very highest level of intelligence that people know what this story is all about will realize, as the Canadians were told, this is the most highly classified secret in the United States, and therefore it would have the highest level of security surrounding it. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no way they're going to give up the situation until they figure out what's going on. And they will not figure out what's going on until they start to adopt consciousness stuff. And we've even got an evidence that they were told this. So, for example, this Jim Semivan guy, who was the head of covert ops, was given a briefing. He talks about this publicly. He was given a briefing. He was told to get a room in the CIA for between 6 and 8 hours. And he said that these guys came in from contractors and military, and they had as many clearance tickets as he had. And he had a lot of clearance tickets. These guys were experts. And they walked in and they went into this room, and for 7 hours, he said they scared the living daylights out of him. And so he was asked, okay, so what did they learn about UFOs? And he said, absolutely nothing. And Jim Semivan has a bet. He said, I will bet 1 year of my pension salary against anybody who thinks they know what's going on, that the government has this stuff. I will bet they have nothing. And I will bet 1 year of my salary on that. And so he had this briefing, and he was asked, well, what did they learn about UFOs? And he said, nothing. Didn't learn anything at all. And then he said, well, what scared you? What was the 7 hour stuff that they went through? And he said, all the psi stuff is right. All the psi stuff is correct. Remote viewing, psychic phenomena, psychics, mediums, all that stuff is accurate and real. And I have now just heard, because the thing is, what scared him then? Because most people in the UFO community wouldn't be scared by that stuff. And one of the things I heard that he may have been talked to about was shifting timelines. And that's this idea that they can actually move timelines and move people back and forth. And just this really, which would be very scary if they're actually working on this kind of stuff. And so I'm not sure what other stuff he was told, but he told the story that he walked around for 3 months in a daze after what he was told. And that his wife actually said, Jimmy, you okay? What's wrong, Jim? And he was just devastated by what he saw. So that might give you an indication of what the public will be looking at if they actually do make disclosure. And so if you got this guy, and he's like the head of James Bond in the United States. I mean, he's the top guy. And if this guy is scared for 3 months, you can imagine if you drop this stuff on the American population. And even Jim Semivan talks about this. He said, there does not appear to be any there. And I tell researchers, I said, what's he talking about when he says there does not be any there? He said, all people say, all we got to do is put together the dots. He said, I don't think there's any dots to put together. I'm not sure there's any dots to put together. And so he's talking about this sort of thing. And he said 50% of the people in the United States are reading at a grade 6 level. And then he said, and you're going to drop this on them? And what the question is, what is this that he's talking about? And I think it's this whole idea that the world is not the way you think it is. It's, very sort of all waves, it's frequencies. The primary thing is not matter, it's consciousness and fields. And the average person, doesn't even think about this kind of stuff. And then you're going to go and give them that kind of stuff. But if they're talking moving timelines or experiences that I've had, other people have had, where you're in an altered state and suddenly you run into a military person in an altered state and you wonder, can they do this? Can they actually get into your head? And that's the kind of stuff that can be pretty scary if they're working on this kind of stuff, where they can actually, go right inside your head and sort of manipulate you to do whatever they want you to do.
Yeah. One of your long-standing ideas involves the connection between UFOs and consciousness.
Yeah.
Why do you think that angle is often ignored in mainstream discussions?
Okay, well, I think the reason is Jim. One of the people we had back in the day, 1990, in around that time, was a guy. Another high level, I think he's the highest level official anybody's ever talked to, and his name was Dr. Eric Walker. He had 14 honorary doctorate degrees. He was a PhD from Harvard, was the chairman of the board of the biggest military think tank at the time in the 1970s, 1980s, Defense Science Board, advisor to President Eisenhower, just went on and on and on, co-developer of the homing torpedo, just impressive background. And we got him, and he basically said, I was at a briefing with crash retrieval and bodies and stuff, and he said, what's the big deal? And of course everybody went nuts, and a bunch of researchers tried to talk to this guy, and he would talk to people sort of in rhymes and riddles. And one of the things he pointed out that sort of occurred to me, that he was actually right. He was right about a lot of the things he said. He said, admit it, you're just curious. You admit it. That's all you want. You want a story. You're just curious. Why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? So Walker sort of pointed this out, that people are, they're taking their kids to soccer practice. They're, making a living, going shopping and stuff like that. And most people don't think about this kind of stuff. And so that's the consideration that Walker had, is that it's way beyond you. Leave it alone. There's nothing you can do about it. And most people are into curiosity, so they want to hear a story. They want to hear, and I find it all the time. You could talk to people about the importance of consciousness. We just wrote a book, Desta Barnaby and I just wrote a 2-part book called The Big Game. We were going to call it the Super Bowl, but then somebody said we'd get sued. So it's like the big game, the World Cup. We are in the World Cup. This is the biggest story of all times. And we link all the paranormal phenomena. We take all the paranormal phenomena and we say, like orbs. You think orbs are in UFOs. No, they're also in psychics, have orbs around them. They also appear in mediumship, physical mediumship, orbs are flying around. These things, you start to realize this may be all the same thing, and that we're parsing this stuff, we're breaking it up, and that's not the way we're supposed to do it. So it's that kind of stuff that people just want to hear a story. Once you talk about consciousness, people sort of turn off, because they think, well, we're gonna have to go back to church or something like that. We just want the nuts and bolts thing. Give us the craft, give us the engine, and get the heck out of here, whoever you are. And we're going to have these cars, and we're going to fly around, and we're going to have free energy. And I always point out to people, all energy is free. You can, if you build a hydro dam in your backyard, you can have all the free energy you want, but energy's free. Nobody's charging for energy. It's a matter of the same guys that control the energy now will control the energy then. If there is some sort of free energy device, they're basically going to control it. It's all about money. So that's where people are at. They want to hear a story, and you can go to Consciousness Life Expo, which is the biggest consciousness conference in the world. It's held in LA every year. and there's like 20,000, 30,000 people. They even have a Mexican or a Spanish section where Spanish lectures are taking place. Anyway, you can go there and you can talk about consciousness. You get 35 people in the room. And then if you're talking about, star traveling space people, or, we've got the secret space program or something across the hall, they've got 700 people in the room, and the consciousness is only 30, because people, that it's too much like religion. They just want to hear a good story. They want to get scared. They want to, hear about different types of aliens and stuff like that, like science fiction. Yeah. But the other stuff, they're just not that interested in. But that is the key to the whole thing. And maybe why we're not getting anywhere is the old idea that, and it's one guy had another analogy for it. He said, it's like you're going around a roundabout 1,000,000 times, and then you see the 7-Eleven for the third time as you're going around. You go, hey, something's going on. I'm going in the wrong place here. And that's what we're doing. We keep doing the same thing over and over since 1947. Let's get some more UFO sightings. Let's, where are they? Let's put them on a map. What color, red ones, green ones, all that sort of stuff. And we keep doing it over. And then 80 years later, we do the same thing. And it's the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over and over again and assume you're going to come to a different conclusion. We're doing the same thing we did in 1947, and we're not getting anywhere. And that's where we got to get off this sort of idea about looking at stuff and lights in the sky, and start talking to the people who've been on board the ship. And when you talk to the people who've been on board the ship, you start to see patterns, and you go, oh, maybe I know what's going on now. In these very definite patterns of, being shown everything in the universe, or life reviews. You see them in near-death experience, but people don't realize that people on board ships have life reviews as well. They're shown their entire life, 360-degree vision. If you're going to make up something, you're not going to say, I could see in 360 degrees. Near-death experience and UFO, all these people describe the same sort of thing. Or instantaneous movement, where people, I wrote a book called UFO Sky Pilots, where I talked to 36 people who've claimed they've flown the craft. And 2 of them definitely said, like, for example, Bob, you say, where would you like to go? And you say, okay, I'd like to see the Milky Way from a distance. That's what one of my friends said. Yeah. And then the being says, okay, Bob, it is within you. Go within yourself. When you can imagine it, then we'll go there. And that's the whole key. I mean, what's going on? They're telling you almost the idea that the way you move around in the universe is you're going through portals. You're not getting a big ship. And I think the government, may realize that idea, that portals is critically important. This idea that you can open these portals, go from one place in the universe to another. But you'll see that in out-of-body experience, people will describe, or near-death experience, where you see something, you're out of your body, and you see something, you want to go to it, and you just zoom in on it instantaneously. There's this instantaneous movement in out-of-body experience and near-death experience. It's the same thing people talk about in the UFO, that you go from one place in the universe to the other instantaneously. You don't have a big ship that takes you 5 years to get there or whatever. It happens instantaneously, and you start to wonder: is this the mind? Is everything in the mind? Is the universe physical the way we think it is, or have these people developed this idea where they know that it's all waves, it's all fields, and frequency and energy, and they know how to manipulate it? And there may not be any planets out there. It all may be inside you, because when you float from your body, if you're having an out-of-body experience or near-death experience, you look down on your body. Where's the consciousness? It's not in the body. You can see your head there. And so where's the body is inside the consciousness, because you're looking at the body. It's inside your consciousness. And you can float over to the window and look out the window, and you can see the whole world is inside your consciousness. And that's where people have to start to realize that may be the way it actually works, is that they teach you, for example, I make the joke about aliens or whatever they are. They come to you and they wake you up. They go, Bob, hey, wake up. And why did they wake you up? I mean, because you just absolutely freak out. And we wrote a book called Contact Modalities, and one of the key things we learned is that trauma is how people dissociate. When people have trauma, that's when they become psychic. That's when they have UFO experiences and stuff like that. So what the alien is doing is it's forcing you to dissociate. People pull the covers over their head. They just sort of surrender. The same as in, say, mystical experiences or psychedelic experiences. They surrender, and then the being says, okay, he's ready to go. He's dissociated. And what they want is kill your ego. kill your ego and leave the ego behind, and they take you out. So the whole thing is like with abductions, it's always a personal event. Nobody ever sees anybody being abducted. It's always a personal event. So the question is, are you actually in your body or are you out of your body when the abduction experience happens? And that would explain how you can go through windows, how you can go through ceilings and stuff like that, that you may not be in your body. You may be out of your body, and that all this stuff is very real, like a lucid dream. It's very real, but it's not happening in the physical world the way we think it is. And that's where everything sort of changes when you start looking at, why have we gotten nowhere? Why have we not developed anything? Why are we still dropping bombs in Iran? We got bombs. They're very guided missiles, but it's the same as World War II. It's just you guiding them, unlike World War II, or even in Ukraine. They got the little drones. These are little helicopters. This is pre-World War II. I mean, where's the advanced weaponry? If we have all this super stuff, we're flying to star systems, why are we still dropping bombs?
Exactly. Are there things and sources I've told you that you still hesitate to publish?
Is there, give me that again.
Are there things, sources I've told you that you still hesitate to publish?
There's nothing that I hesitate to publish. My experiences, I'm not sure whether my experiences are related to the UFO experience. I had a lot of UFO experiences, but I didn't have any, except one that was kind of weird, where there was kind of a time thing, but it was before the idea of lost time. This is in the 70s. Lost time, the missing time didn't occur till 83 when Bud Hopkins wrote the book. So we didn't know about missing time at the time. But otherwise, mine have been more like revelations like musicians get, or like people with inventions. And I wrote a book called Inspired about this whole idea of like Paul McCartney getting the song Yesterday in a Dream. That's the kind of stuff that I get, where my way to make contact is I walk about 4 hours a day. So that's where you sort of dissociate, your ego sort of shuts down, your left brain shuts down, and it kills the noise and the signal, and suddenly boom, somebody's talking to you. So
do you get downloads then?
Yes, I've gotten a number, but I've got two major ones. The one that changed me from doing the president stuff to consciousness was February 26, 2012. That's when I was Colin Andrews was in the United States giving a lecture on crop circles, and I had no interest in crop circles whatsoever. I didn't care, and it was a big conference where it goes from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. Right. So I figured, you don't go to all the lectures. So you decide, I don't want to watch this lecture. I'm going to go for lunch. We'll go to the next lecture. So Colin was there, and I thought, I'm not interested in crop circles. I don't think I'll go to his lecture. And then I was thinking, he's a pretty prominent guy. I've never seen him lecture, and I should pay him respect. I'll go to his lecture. So I go to his lecture, but I'm not interested. I'm listening. I'm sort of thinking about what I want to do and stuff like that. And that's when people will get downloads, when you sort of shut down that little voice in your head. And suddenly it came into my head that it's all consciousness, and it put three things into my head instantaneously. And I knew for certainty, it wasn't like it was a good idea. I knew for a fact that this was the way it worked. It comes with absolute certainty. And then I had one in 2016 where I'm walking downtown. It's about a 6-mile walk, and I'm about 2 miles into the walk, and suddenly it's very cold, and I have gloves on and stuff like that. And this came into my head, and I know what it feels like. It has this absolute certainty. It's like, just get the pen, start write this down, right? And so I take the glove off, and I'm writing this stuff down. And what it was showing me there, and this I haven't released, but it was just not because I don't have time. But it was 24 things, and it said, everything that you believe is wrong. It's exactly the opposite of what you believe. So is the world separate? Are we all separate things in the world, or are we all connected as one? Is the world random, or is it pattern? Is these kind of things? Is it this, or does this? You think it's this, it's actually this. You think it's this, it's actually this. And it gave me 24 things, and luckily I wrote them down, and I've still got them in a list. And eventually I hope I'm going to write a book that talks about these 24 things I was given. But nothing that I've ever been given has ever been turned out to be wrong. Nothing. I mean, some of these classic things about the oneness. People will describe this over and over again. The number one message that UFO experiences bring back is oneness and love. And this is the same message that's brought back by near-death experience people, that the whole universe is made out of love, and that everything is connected. Everything in time and space is connected. You'll see this over and over again. So these are the kind of messages that I was getting. And I hope to eventually get it out. But I've gotten a few of these things. It's sort of like I've got about maybe 10 books that are going at the same time. It's sort of like I start one book and I'm just about finished. And then suddenly this other idea comes to my head, and I start doing research, and I start putting together an outline, and I do that book, but I don't finish the first book. I've got probably 10 books that are, 70% done that I haven't released, or 100% done. They just have to be edited. And so that's the way I work. I'm trying to write down as much as I can of the ideas that come to me and record it for history. That's what I think we got to do. That, Bob, you and I lived in one of the greatest stories of all times, and that you should record like what you're doing. You put it out. It doesn't help you. The Bible says too much is given, much is expected. Knowledge not used is sin, Edgar Casey said, or the idea that what profiteth the man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul. So what happens if you get all this information and you don't put it out? It doesn't help. It only helps if you put it out. That's, I think, why we came into the world, is that you wanted to do something like this. And you feel good when you're getting the material out, and you do your little job. I do my little job, and together we raise consciousness. And what's going to happen? That people say we're not really making any progress in the UFO community. I say we absolutely are, because I was in this in 1975, and I can tell you none of this existed. You can talk now. You can go to China. You can go to the Africa, you can go anywhere where people really don't know anything, and you can say Area 51, I know what that is. UFOs, I know what that is. Say, Skinwalker Ranch, I know what that is. And near-death experience, they may not believe it, but they'll say, I know what that is. And that's the thing, is the consciousness is rising. And what Max Planck, the guy that invented quantum physics, and he was ridiculed too when he got quantum physics, he said, you do not win by convincing your opponent he's wrong. You win when your opponent dies. One funeral at a time. The new generation is not offended with the idea. So all your skeptics will float by in the river, down the river. They're all going to die. And then the new generation says, oh yeah, UFOs are real. Yeah, we know all this. And it's not offensive to them. So it'll be the new generation that comes on. And you and I are just putting the sort of the consciousness in there for them to pick up. And at some point, it's going to flip, where everybody suddenly realizes, like, when did we suddenly accept the fact that there's multiple galaxies? Well, I don't remember when it was, and it just sort of comes into the belief of people, and nobody really knows when it happened. And you can see that now, that people, when Jim Semivan pushed this story about the New York Times, what happened in 2017 is when they put it out and said, oh yeah, it's true, UFOs are real, and the government's studying them, and everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. Come on, tell me something I didn't know. And nobody even bothered about it, because people say before 2017, we used to have this thing, and saying people are going to jump off bridges, and the religious people are going to go nuts, and the stock market's going to melt down. And what happened? Nothing happened. And that's because the intelligence community and UFO community itself, or researchers, raised the consciousness to a point where it didn't flip. The people all sort of accepted it before it was actually announced by the New York Times.
Yeah. What makes a whistleblower credible in such a controversial field?
Another good question. I'm very hesitant about whistleblowers. Because my first question, if a whistleblower came to me, and I did have this experience with an associate of Ron Pandolfi, phoned me up one time and said, "Oh, the U.S. intelligence asked me to talk to you," and I said, "Really? Do you realize I'm a Canadian? Why would U.S. intelligence say to talk to me?" I'm always very skeptical of this kind of thing. Like, why are you offering this stuff? Like, as I said, I was part of an operation that's ongoing right now, where they're doing the same thing. They're going to try to put some material into the UFO field through a film guy. And so when a whistleblower comes forward, my first question to him would be, why are you not in jail? Because this is the most highly classified secret in the United States. It's like the atomic bomb. Hey, Bob, I'm here to tell you the latest American nuclear weapon, how many Polaris submarines there are, how many weapons there are on each, and they throw you in jail. I mean, how do you get to walk out and tell the most highly classified secret in the United States? And it's always this thing that people forget, that there's 10 times the amount of money spent on counterintelligence to protect the program as there is. And everybody sort of goes along like there's no counterintelligence. There's no operation to try to direct us in a different direction. And to me, I'm always very sensitive. So I listen to them, but I really don't pay much attention to what whistleblowers are saying. Because it's always that bottom line is how is this guy not in jail? How is he allowed to walk out and tell the most highly classified secret in the United States to people like you and me? I mean, why are they not going to the New York Times? Why are they not going to the Washington Post? Why are they coming to little, rinky-dink researchers like you and me? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. That. And the other thing you would say to a whistleblower is, okay, you signed a non-disclosure agreement with the American government, correct? Yes. Okay. And you said that you swore that you were going to not give it up. Yes. Okay. So you lied to the American government and you're not going to give it up. You've broken your non-disclosure agreement. So why, if you lied to the U.S. government, why should I believe you when you're coming to me now? I'm very sensitive about how these guys are not in jail. I just can't figure it out.
No, I can't. If disclosure truly happens, what do you think it will actually look like?
I'm always saying, I've written this since the 1970s. I think it's this gradual disclosure that they've done. Even we go back to the 1950s with Walt Disney. They had advisors and wanted Walt Disney to do a documentary. Walt Disney did the documentary, but it was never released. In the 1970s, they had Bob Emenegger tell the story about the Holloman Air Force Base story. He was directly hired by the Pentagon. He was paid by the Pentagon under a contract, and he released some material that they gave him that had never been seen before. And they've done this over and over again. So I think it's still going to be a gradual disclosure. It's like the Rand report in the 1960s said, unless you acclimatize people, it's going to be a disaster. You have to acclimatize people, get them ready for what they're doing. And that's what I think is going on. So I don't think there's going to be any major disclosure where the president stands up. And there's supposed to be this story that on the anniversary of Roswell, that Trump's going to stand up and make an announcement. But what can he say? I think the most he can say is, yes, there are crafts, there are bodies, we've recovered them, but we don't understand them. That's a very dangerous position. He may do it. We'll see if he does it. But if you don't understand the situation, like as I said, the one corollary was it's going from sticks to stones to semi microprocessors. It's that big a jump, according to. And I'll tell you one story. This is a story that I sort of put together, and some people are sort of catching on now. There's a story. I don't know if you watch. The two people should watch are Jim Semivan, who doesn't give many interviews, and James Lakatsky, who gives almost no interviews. So James Lakatsky claims that part of his job is to take highly classified material and bring it down to lower classifications. He's going to do disclosure in 4 books. His third book is out now. No, his second book is out now. It's going to be 3-4 books. And he said that's his job, to disclose what's actually going on. So one of the things that he talked about was this idea that in 2011, people say that the government hasn't been briefed. He says in 2011, I was in a congressional facility, which means people were being briefed. He's in a congressional facility. He's in a skiff, and there's a senator with him who ended up being confirmed as being Harry Reid. So he's there, and he said, we managed to breach a craft, and it has no engine, it has no propulsion system, and he basically outlines this sort of thing. So the question is, this is 2011, and they breached the craft. I mean, they finally got in the craft in 2011, and you start wondering, like, what's the deal? So it was picked up in the second interview he did, where Jeremy Corbell asked him, okay, can you tell me what's inside the craft? And he said, if you knew what was inside the craft, you'd know that the rest of everything in the book is totally primitive. And then they asked him, how did you breach the craft? And he said, I can't go there. And one of the stories that was told to me by Jack Sarfati, who's a physicist who claims that he got a download in 1953, I think it was, about the 400 smart people that were going to give all the material to, and he was one of the smart people. And he tells a story about a Navy officer, a friend of his, who runs a program on the East Coast with a craft, and that they could not get in the craft, and that the craft is alive, it's conscious. This I learned from this 36 people to the craft. The craft is alive, it's conscious. when you touch the craft, you become one with the craft, and wherever you think is what the craft will do. And you can go from here to there instantaneously. So he said that nobody could get in this craft. And the reason was that the craft has a mind of its own. Not only is it conscious, it has a mind of its own. And unless you vibrate at the right level, they ain't opening the door. And that is wild. I mean, if that's true, that you can't even get in the craft. And then you start looking at near-death experience. So if you go and you look up near-death experience, you'll see exactly the same story. That people are in buildings. They say, I was in this building, and the building, it was like made out of granite, but the granite looked like it was alive, and it was in there, and these doors would open. But the only door that you could open in there was at your level. So they were teaching these lessons in these different rooms, and the door would open, and it would be like molten metal. It would just sort of open up. The person would go in and would sort of go back together. So you see exactly the same story. Or you see the other wild story I always tell, when you see the connection between the spirit world and the UFO world, is my friend Ron Johnson, who tells me the story that LB, who's the being that he was dealing with, took him to the spirit world with his dead mother. And his dead mother is there, and he's talking to, he says, as real as you and I talking. He said, we're standing in this field and we're talking. And then he said, and there's this, he's a Mormon guy. So he said, over in the distance, there was this little tiny Mormon temple. And his mother said, Ron, when you die, you're going to get a room in this building. And your father's got a room in this building. I've got a room in this building. So he said, they go over to the building, and he said, I go in the building. He said, Grant, you can't believe it, man. He said, it was like 10 or 100 times the size inside as it was outside. And I'm thinking, hey, that's what the UFO people say. It's bigger on the inside. And so I'm going like, so are you in the spirit world? Or are you in a UFO? And when you see those kind of corollaries where these things are exactly the same story, you start to wonder what's really going on here. Do we actually see it? Or I do a whole thing about one of my next books will have this list of things that should give you the impression that aliens aren't aliens. In fact, one of the women said, she asked him, are you actually an alien? And he said, well, no, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the creator. And everybody that I've had experiences where I say, ask him if he's an alien, will always say, no, I'm neither alien to this planet or any other planet. I've been here. You're the visitor, something like that. And so I have this whole list about things about aliens that where you start looking, and they're almost like dream signs. If you've ever done lucid dreaming thing, you know that in your dream, as soon as you realize they call it dream signs. So your dead father's in the dream, and you're going, hey, my father's dead. Like, what's he doing in it must be a dream. And then suddenly you become awake, and we are asleep. So that's what it is. So the system operates all these dream signs that you should catch on that something else is going on other than aliens. For example, people will always say to, hey, the alien have any clothes on? And the person goes, no, I don't think so. No, he doesn't have any clothes on. And I say, well, don't you think that was kind of weird? And they go, I never thought about it. And do you have any sex organs? No. Do you have any belly button? No. Have any nipples? No. And then there was the one where he does this scan where the gray alien goes right close to you and looks in your eyes. And then David Jacobs, who was doing the regressions, always say, hey, stop. I'm going to ask you a question. Listen, is he breathing? And then the person says, no, he's not breathing. And then you realize suddenly that there's no toilets on a UFO. So they don't go to the bathroom. And then they don't seem to sleep. And just what was on and on and on, all these things. They never get any older. I remember telling someone, they'd seen the being for 70 years. And I said, doesn't it kind of weird? You're a boy and a girl, both of them. You're a little kid, you saw them, and now they didn't get any older. And they say, oh, yeah, but aliens live a long time. Yeah, they never got any older. And then Chris Bledsoe, and you get there's 25% of people that have claim they talked to non-human intelligence, have said the being was with them in their last lifetime. Well, if the being has been with you in your last lifetime, then he can't be from another. How does he happen to come from another planet? That doesn't make any sense. And you start to see these things. And the more you look, the more you say, oh, is this actually an alien? And that's, I think, what they're doing. It's a higher intelligence that can take on whatever form it wants, because what you get in the UFO community, what a lot of people don't realize, is you get this situation where the phenomena is morphing. It's changing. So in 1896, there were wooden ships with propellers and balloons and guys hanging off of ropes and, with beards and stuff, and dressed like ordinary people. And then you had the Foo Fighters. Then you had the green fireballs. Then you had Adamski and these guys in suits and coming from Mars and Venus. And then suddenly we realized, oh, it couldn't be from Mars and Venus. So now they're from Alpha Centauri and they're from Zeta Reticuli. And then we came into multidimensional in the 1960s. And then suddenly they're multidimensional beings. And what they're doing is they're Barbara Streisand's stepson is a full-blown experiencer. He told me that what he was told is when we come into your world, Bob, we go into your head and we see what's in your head. And it is whatever's in your head. That's what we use to build a lesson for you. We have no other choice. So what they're doing is they're coming to us and based upon our beliefs. So you have Mission Rama people, and this is a very religious sort of Roman Catholic Latino group, and there's 25,000 around the world, and they do this meditation and they try to get these in contact like a CE5 type thing, but it's a very religious thing. And they've had a lot of contacts with aliens, but there's 33 different aliens that they're in contact with. I think it's a list, and they're all like they popped out of the Bible. I mean, they got the long hair, they're all muscular, they're wearing clothes, boots and stuff like that, and wearing robes and stuff like that, right out of the Bible. And I say, I defy you to find any Mission Rama person who will ever talk about a gray, a reptilian, or a mantid. So this is the thing. I mean, these people are seeing one type of being, the people are seeing another type of being, and you start to see that kind of stuff, and you realize that this phenomena is morphing. It comes to you, whatever you want to believe, that's what it's going to appear as, because otherwise you're going to fight against it. They want to give you something that's acceptable to you to understand. And that one of them said, when we come into your world, we take on a body. We don't need to take on a body, but we do to work in your world. You can do the same thing. You just don't know it.
Yeah, I like that. What's the most mind-blowing piece of information you've encountered while writing this book?
Okay, well, I haven't written this story up yet, but the biggest story I've ever had, and this goes to the Mission Rama people, I've done 5 stories on what they call Zendrums, when they open these portals where they go in with the beings. And the 5th one was the most dramatic of all. It ties into the 4th. I won't get into the whole story. The 4th happened in 2017, and then this one happened in 2020. And one of the guys in 2017 had the hitchhiker effect, where this thing followed him home. Then he was given instructions what to do, and then to go back to Mount Shasta, and this being would appear. And the being that was going to appear, his name was Adama. So this is during COVID. This is 2020, August of 2020. So what happens is they're filming in the afternoon, and the one woman who's the so they call the intuitive, the one that's sort of in charge, she's getting the messages, contacting the being and stuff like that. She gets this. She says, "Can I film?" And these people are lying on the ground doing what's called the rose ceremony. They have these sort of red pieces of paper on them, looks like roses, and it looks like they've all been shot. It looks really weird. So she's filming around this circle as their people are doing this meditation. And this being appears on the edge of the forest, and it's wearing a robe, a white robe, all from head to toe, looks like a woman in a white robe. And they don't pick this up until later, after they've sort of looked at people, a number of people looked at the film. They said, what's this woman doing here? And this being doing there. So that happened. And then that night, the bizarre thing happened. So what happens is Saturday night is the program sighting. So usually it's Saturday night. There's a certain time. 2 of the people they call them antennas in the group, will have to get the same message as to what time it's going to come. And then at that time, the ship will fly by or whatever happens. And so the program sighting, I don't know what happened during the program sighting, but 2 o'clock in the morning, a number of them are still there because you camp up on this site. It's 4,000 feet up Mount Shasta. So they're camping, and they're sitting in a circle, and they're having a birthday party. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's totally pitch dark. They're in the middle of this field, and there's no trees in sort of the area where they are. They call it the sand flat. So they're having this thing, and all of a sudden the woman who's the intuitive says, because Adama had said he was going to come, and he hadn't come yet. So she says, Adama's here. And they go, how do you know? I just know. It's this idea of knowing. I just know. I know he's here. Oh, look over there. There's a light on the edge of the forest. And then, of course, everybody looks over there, and everybody says the same thing. Every time this happens, people say, oh, it's just a camp light. Just somebody's got their camp light on at 2 o'clock in the morning. No, that's them. No, that's them. Oh, they say they want us to come over there. And then the people go, we're not going over there. No way. It's like, we're not going. It's pitch dark, and there's potholes, and somebody's going to break their leg going over there. And then the intuitor says, oh, okay, hang on. They say they're coming here. It's okay, but they're going to come here. And they said it was there was like elephants as these beings were coming across this dark opening on the sand flats. And I interviewed 3 of these 9 people, and they were telling the story. First, they said, we're Latino. We don't want to be egotistical. We don't want to be the center of this thing, and by the end, they're all fighting to tell the story. And so they're sitting there and they were just petrified now. They just hear these elephants like coming across the field. And so they all hold hands and they start to om. And then the one guy says to me, he says, and it sounded like we were underwater. And as soon as he said that, I knew they were in a portal. They were in what's called a Zendra. And I've heard it numerous times from people inside of Zendras that when you get in there, when you talk, it sounds like you're underwater. So this guy said, we're oming and it sounds like we're underwater. And I didn't say about the Zendra. I said, oh, okay. And so he's telling the story. And it comes up and they're just petrified. And then all of a sudden they're levitated into the air. There's 9 people holding hands and they're levitated up into the air, and they're up in the air, and these beings are there and they're oming and they're just petrified. They don't know what to do. And Adama's there with these other beings. So I said to the guy, or somebody else asked the question. So Adama was there. Yeah, it was Adama. And was there other beings for them? Yes, because usually there's a 10-foot being and then there's 2 8-foot beings on either side of them with these Mission Rama things. And so the question was asked, so how many beings were with him? And I remember the guy's statement was, there was as many beings as there was trees in the forest. It's like, whoa, like unbelievable. And then there's like millions of trees there. It's like it's like totally huge, massive trees. And that's what he said. There was as many, but they were etheric beings. And you'll see this. This is the most recorded type of entity that's recorded with UFOs, and that's an etheric type being. And that's the same thing you're going to see in ghost stuff and all sorts of psychic, other near-death experiences stuff. Is like a being, and you can sort of see the outline of the being, but it's glowing like the light at the end of the tunnel type thing. And that's what these guys were reporting, that Adamo was there with these thousands of these beings. And then I said to them, I said, well, how did it end? And they go, I don't know. I have no idea how it ended. And then suddenly they're down and they're going to their tents. And some people were so shaken by what had happened, they actually packed out their tent like at 3:00 in the morning and went home. And they just left in the middle of the night from this place. And some of them were in the tent and they were just petrified. And they could hear the beings, and they could sort of see the shadow of the beings going around the tents, that they were walking around the tents. And most of the people were totally blown away by this thing. And then the being appeared the next morning down at the they had some people stayed at a motel at the bottom, and there was all this bizarre stuff. The being was down there as well in the morning. That is the most unbelievable, because I've got 9 witnesses now. I've talked to 3 of them, but then they heard that the CIA wanted to send somebody to check these portal things. And once that became known that the CIA was interested, nobody wants to talk. It's like, it's completely, but it was a Mexican lady, and we know who all 9 people are. But that is the most bizarre story I've ever seen, because it's 9 witnesses, and these people you probably never heard the story. Nobody's heard the story because they just don't want to talk about it. This is very private to them. And because I was involved in these other portal stories and stuff like that, and one of the girls that was with me at Mount Shasta when I went twice was the setup. We got to interview these people, and it's just a bizarre story, just watching these people tell this story, as serious can be, and just ordinary gardeners and ordinary people, no high level people, just ordinary people who went there and had this unbelievable experience of being levitated up in the air with these beings around them, and the beings are oming and the people are oming, and it's like, wow, just unreal. That makes you think that this is way more than extraterrestrials. This is a very complex sort of story that is reflective of what you and I believe. And so the thing is to have the positive attitude, and you're going to have a positive experience. If you're afraid, you're probably going to have a great type of experience and stuff like that. And that's what you see, this reflective nature, that you sort of project. Whatever you project out is what you get back.
This is good. What case or story still keeps you up all night?
Well, Nothing really in the UFO field. The one I had was the psychedelic experience where I did 27 high dose psychedelic experiments to try to get in the field. So the idea is that we are down in the dark. We're in the water, in the ocean, and we're down at the bottom with in the dark, and we have no idea what's going on. And there's different modalities. Like we wrote this book called Contact Modalities, where you could float up. It shows you 70 different ways you can float up into the sort of higher realms. Then you see fish, and then as you get closer and closer to the top, you can see more and more as you get closer to the light at the top. So what I realized is we're in this dark, and there's people who are able, where there's psychics or mediums or abductees or whatever, who are able to get in the field, and they're told certain stuff. And that's why I say these are the people you got to listen to. Why would you not listen to these people? They've been there, they've picked up something, and you should learn what these people who are closer to the light have to say. So I couldn't do, I was doing meditation, it didn't work, lucid dreaming, I couldn't get that to work, all sorts of things I was trying. So I knew psychedelics would work, that you'd get in the field, but it's very sort of like getting on a roller coaster. And once you get on the roller coaster, you're not getting off. And I wasn't too keen on that. So I was pretty afraid to do it. But I ended up doing 27 sessions, and about number 23 or 24, somewhere in there, they were starting to go bad. I mean, it's almost like the phenomenon was telling you, you've done enough of this, go do something else. Why are you back here again? And it was 20, about 23, 24, somewhere in there, just before I stopped doing it. And one of these things this is one of the things that stopped me from doing, was I was in the field, I was there, and I'm waiting for lessons, because the way I do it is I say, okay, I'm here for a lesson. Just tell me what I need to know. I'm not here. I don't want anything. Just what do I need to know? I need, and they would bring up the ego thing, about my ego. You think you know what's going on. You haven't got a clue what's going on. And they would hammer me with that all the time. But anyway, so the one time, and a lot of this question came down, are they killing your ego? Because they'd put you in these very bad situations like hell, and then you'd surrender and you'd suddenly be out of it. And so it's always this ego thing, that you can't go in these sessions with ego. They crush your ego as you go in. So I don't know if this is an ego crushing thing or whether this is real. And this is why it sort of scared me when I heard Jim Semivan talking about the fact that for 3 months he walked around, when he heard what kind of psychic stuff these people were working on, the intelligence agencies that sort of set him off. And this set me off. So I'm in the field, and all of a sudden, down to my left, there's a guy, and it's an army guy, and he's on a computer. And I sort of glanced, and it just instantaneously, and I knew for a fact he was there. Like say, this sense of knowing, I knew this guy was there, and I said, "Have you cracked reality? What are you doing?" And boom, he's gone. And it just shook me, because I'm going like, that guy was actually there. Like, what's going on? And then the next one I did was even worse. So I go into the next one, and now they appear on the right-hand side up higher, and there's more than one of them. There's at least two, and there's a guy standing up. And I actually have a conversation. I don't remember any of the conversation that I had with these guys, but I'm actually, because I had once before. So I'm saying, and I've actually confirmed that, yeah, they were claiming to be sort of U.S. military who had learned to do this kind of stuff. And the reason they picked me up was because when you get into the field, when you light up like a light bulb, and they're in the field as well, and they can pick you up, so they can get in. And so they were I was confronting them about what they were doing and stuff like that, about this whole idea that they could do this. And then the one guy said, "We've decided to take your piece off the board to make the game more exciting." I went, "What? You're gonna what?" and I was just like shaking, man. After that, I was like, "Oh!" I did maybe one or two more sessions, but after that, I was like, "Whoa!" And I actually went around to. I deal with a lot of channelers, trance channelers. I think they have some pretty accurate stuff. And I went to some of them, and they basically said, "No, you have to understand, you're creating your own reality. That you're creating this. It's a shadow figure that you're creating." But I tell you, man, it sure shook me. And when I heard Jim Semivan talk about this thing, I'm thinking, is that one of the things they can do, get in your head, where you're okay if you don't do psychedelics, but once you light up, they can pick you up. It's like, "Hey, who's this guy over here?" And then they're able to come into your mind, because you and them are both in the same field. So that was the thing that really shook me. But UFOs, really nothing has shaken. I know the one incident I had where the thing was over top of the car, where it was the scariest moment of my life. We were used to chase this thing around, And then suddenly it was turned around. And suddenly it was coming after us, and it sat right above the car, and it was huge, huge or very close, either one. And I remember I was so scared. I had binoculars. I'm looking through the windshield of the car, looking up, and my hands were shaking so bad I had to hold it against the glass to stop my hands from shaking. That was scary. And then the thing made a shift. It was like it was sitting there. It was a triangle, two red lights and a green light in the back, and it just made a shift, almost like you take a film, you break the film and you put it back together, and it jerks like that. It was just this little jerk, and boom, the fear was instantaneously gone, absolutely gone. There was no fear whatsoever, and this thing just faded away off into the distance. Now, if people say, have you ever been abducted? I say, if I ever was abducted, that was the time. I don't remember anything. I really don't care whether I was or not. I think I'm doing what I want to do. And the same as you. I mean, you feel good when you do this kind of stuff, when you're sort of giving back and you're doing this kind of stuff. That's all I'm worried about, whether I was abducted or what happened or whatever. That I can't change that. It doesn't really matter. You just go by your feeling, almost like the channel Bashar says, you live your life to a highest expectation. You find out what excites me the most. Do it. 5 minutes from now, what excites me the most? Do it. Just keep doing that. And that is your inner self telling you where to go, what direction to take. And everything the synchronicities will start and stuff like that. But if you're questioning everything, then you go the other way. But this live your life to its highest expectation. So that's what I try to do. It's like when I do this kind of stuff, it makes me feel like, I'm sort of contributing, and I'm sort of, I feel good after I do this kind of stuff. So that, and, you're giving to, charity causes and stuff like that. It's the same sort of thing where you're giving back to the world. And I think that's what you and I, we have a lot of stuff. It's the old idea, to whom much is given, much is expected. So when you and I die, you can't, and they say, how'd it work out, Bob? And you go, well, Hillary Clinton and my mother-in-law, and they go, no, you can't talk about them. It's about you. You planned this thing. You planned your whole life. How did it work out? Oh, I forgot to do this. I was going to do that. Oh, this, and that's sort of regret you get is. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, you feel like, it's actually a good thing. And that's what it comes down to. Because I'm a big fan of Michael Newton, who did 7,000 regressions, took people into the spirit world, and then brought them back again. And he talks about this judgment thing where you judge yourself. And he said, what did people say? And he said, all 7,000 people said the same thing. I could have done better. I forgot to do this, and I got scared. I didn't do that. And that's what it comes down to is us doing what because people think, we're accidental. That was the thing that I got in this download. Is it pattern, or is it accidental? And we think it's accidental, that everything's happening by accident. No, it's pattern. You planned this thing. You came into the world. And so the question is, why did I choose to come into the world? And you came in to enjoy something, to learn something, to experience something, whatever. And are you doing what you agreed to do? And usually, as Newton says, when you get out of it, you say, oh man, I could have done a lot more. I'll go back again. I want to do it. I'll try it again. And that's what we're doing. We're going through this loop and loop and loop, and all the world's a stage, and we are etheric beings, which I always try to pour out to people. You are an etheric being. You are not the puppet on the stage. It's a Shakespearean play. All the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. You come into the world, read your damn lines, and leave. And the next generation will come in and continue the play. That's what it is. We sort of associate ourselves with the puppet, and we don't realize we are etheric beings. We are the producer of the show. And in one of my psychedelic experiences, I remember there was an Indian song was going on. I was using this special playlist. This Indian song was going on. And all of a sudden, this voice came to me and said, Grant, don't you remember who you actually were? And it was a song about Shiva. And I go, Shiva? Was I Shiva? How could I be Shiva? Am I some Indian god? I was trying to figure it. And then suddenly it occurred to me that it was this idea. Remember who you actually are. You aren't Grant. You aren't this sort of thing. You're playing Grant. And when you leave the world, you and I, same thing. When we go into the next world, we're not even going to remember this world. We're not even going to remember this conversation that we had. And so what are we worrying about it for? We get dragged down into this sort of like minutia of trying to, correct everything and get everything right and all this sort of stuff. And in the end, it's you're going to wake up when you die and say, oh, that was a wild one, man. That was a pretty good dream, man. And you realize that's you, and you're going to play all these different roles. You live forever, and if you got to keep that in your head, and it keeps your perspective that if you live forever, you got forever to figure things out, and just sort of do what you can that makes you feel good, live to your highest expectation with no expectation of results. Because people will say, I'll live to my highest expectation, but I still want to win the lottery. No, you got to just go with it and let it go, and then it'll work. But if you're trying to plan it, then you start doing things out of fear, and everything that happens out of fear is going to be a mistake.
Finally, I know Janice were in chat room. She just wanted to ask this question.
Yep.
She said, why do some visitors harm people, like Paul Sinclair, for example?
Give me that question again.
Why do some visitors harm people like Paul Sinclair, for example?
Well, again, it's what you're expecting. Like I asked Whitley Strieber this question. In fact, my assistant's fiance just had a heart attack. So the question is there anything death? So say some death is the ultimate thing. Well, we see death as bad when death is just a transition. It's all just experience. When you look back into your past life, you see that it was all just experience. Oh, I got shot by, in an Indian battle, and the Indians shot me with an arrow. That was pretty cool. And we sort of look at it that way, but we're looking at it right now. We just want all the good stuff. We don't want the bad stuff. And it's the bad stuff that transitions you. But this thing of the reflective nature of it, I asked Whitley Strieber. I said, Whitley, he had one of the worst experiences possible. He's still always complaining about it. It's been 40 years later. And I said, Whitley, do you think your experience, having a really bad experience, had anything to do with the fact that you wrote horror novels before you got into this thing? He wrote these very famous The Hunger, and all these movies were done, and this horrible, and that's so what you expect. It's this idea is be careful what you're thinking about, because that's what you're going to manifest. That it's not blaming the person, but you got to realize that you're creating your own reality, and that in the end, if the world is not random, then you chose. Like I say to people, for example, UFO experience. 37% of people who've had a near-death experience, who've claimed they've had contact with non-human intelligence, have also had a near-death experience. They've gone through the windshield of a car. They've been run over by a car, whatever. It's horrible experiences where they die and they come back and stuff like that. And so the question are those random events? Did you choose to be abducted by an alien? And did you choose to have a near-death experience, or was it random? I say there's no way it's random. We're planning these things, so we will plan our own death. So you say, well, what could be worse than planning your own death? It's this idea that we take responsibility, no matter whether it's your fault or not. You take responsibility, and I think there's a big reflective element of the beings that you see. For example, I say with the Mission Rama people. There's nobody who's talked about a reptilian and a mantid or a gray. And people don't realize the grays only appeared in 1961. The reptilians only appeared in 1980. And we got to realize that these things are transitionary beings. And what is there? And it's the other thing is, if you take a look at lucid dreaming, which is another thing that I think people should look at, there's a key lesson. I guess it's in dreams and lucid dreaming. If you're in a lucid dream, and you have an evil whatever coming to do whatever to you, they'll tell you in psychedelics, and they'll tell you in lucid dreaming, do not turn around. Do not turn around and run. When that being is coming, no matter how scary he is, walk up to him, grab him, give him a big hug and a kiss, and tell him you love him. And the being will change from a negative to a positive being, and he will give you a positive message. That's an absolute message in lucid dreaming. And that's something we got to realize, is that everything's happening inside consciousness. There is no out there. We are creating our own world. And so when you create, it's like creating your shadow figures, that maybe I need to experience this. And you can't, as I say, you can't be blaming outside people, your mother-in-law, the dog ate the homework or stuff like that, because in the end, we're planning the experience.
What question do you wish journalists would ask you but never do?
Well, it would be the consciousness thing, about what's the importance of consciousness, because I did two real big interviews in Montreal, and even though I mentioned to them consciousness was important, they would go there, but it would always circle back around to simple things like UFOs, abductions, disclosure, stuff like that. And what's happening, like with media, is that media are looking for clicks. And you probably know that if you have a show that has a lot of bad stuff, real sort of scary stuff on it, your numbers will go up. The fear thing. But if you've got very positive stuff, your numbers will drop. And that's what it is. It's this click thing that people, the two biggest YouTube ones I did were Tom DeLonge. This whole thing about Tom DeLonge and this disclosure that's coming had 150,000 hits. When I do a consciousness thing, I can be down 2,000, 1,000 hits. And you can see the big difference. And that's where I think, but again, it's part of the plan that we're not ready for it yet. And that what you and I are doing is raising consciousness. The more we talk about it, it's like the idea in Hollywood. It doesn't matter where what they say about you, Bob. Just make sure they spell your name right, because and that's what happened in the United States. I show people how reflective consciousness works. If you go 2015 in the United States of America, and you take a look at the United States of America in 2015, and you look at it today, and you tell me it's the same country, it's not even close to the same country. What happened? Someone told a story, someone repeated the story, someone repeated the story, someone repeated the story, someone repeated the story, and the whole country changed to a country that's totally unrecognizable to me, who lives like 5 miles from the border. I just can't, but it's this reflective thing that it doesn't, you don't have to have somebody come in and change you. It happens by people repeating stories. So when people start repeating all the good stuff and the good experiences, then the consciousness will rise up. And if you take out all the channelers, they'll all say the same thing. What's happening now is the dead bodies are being dug out of the basement, and they have to be brought up into the light to be seen in a new light. That's what's happening. All that's happening now is being meant to shift us away to decide what do we really want for sure. And that unless you see the darkness, you won't know what the light is. That's what's happening now. So this is all necessary. It's all part of the plan, no matter how bad it looks. And so it's up to us to just do our little part of the plan, because when we leave the world, they're just going to ask you one question: how did it work out? You said you were going to, because what happens if you have the UFO world or the political world or whatever, you have there's a story about the three waves. That when they come in, there's the three waves, and they say there's going to be this time when the world's just going to go crazy, and consciousness is, we're going to raise the consciousness. And you, Bob, you put your hand up, I'll go. And say, well, I don't know, Bob, you've been there a few times. No, I'll volunteer, I'll go. And so when I say to people, whatever bad situation you find yourself in, you got to realize that whatever bad situation you find yourself in, maybe you chose to be here at this time, this place, in the middle of whatever mess you think you're in, because you agreed to come here to change whatever's in this thing, that you said that you could help change it. And so even the idea that we're in this thing, we want to be in the ideal time where everything's good. But when you're in the ideal time, you don't go to the gym, you don't work out, your muscles go, you can't walk anymore, that we have to lift weights, we have to do strenuous things that aren't very enjoyable, because that's part of the process, that in order to strengthen ourselves, we got to go through the pain of learning. And that's what's going on now, that when we leave, we're going to go like, this was the wildest life I ever lived. Like, wow, I got to be, and people will see us 500 years from now, like, man, those people are so cool. They actually got to be there when this whole thing started. And they don't realize that it was a tough go, that we had uncertainty and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I say. Just realize the fact that you are, we call it the big game, but there's these two books, but it's the Super Bowl. You and I are in the World Cup soccer final, or in the Super Bowl. And we don't realize that most people live lives of quiet desperation. They don't even know there's a game going on. Then there are people who are in the stands who are watching the game, but you and I, Bob, we're on the field. We're playing the game. What better life could you get to play in the most highly classified secret, the biggest story that will ever come down the pike, and just appreciate it and realize the fact that, when you leave the world, that you get to look back and say, okay, I think I made a difference, and that was a good life, and let's try another life and see if we can make the world a better place by doing whatever we're going to do next time around. I'm always sort of fearful I'm going to end up in India in the junkyard, looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. Like, because I had such a good life this time, to say, oh, you got to have one of these bad ones now, and these refugees walking around the world with no place to live. So I enjoy it while it lasts, because we've got this unbelievable life that we're living here. People will see us as being very lucky, like living at the time of Jesus or something like that, where and that's what the phenomena is doing. Sometimes I call it the Jesus circus. The phenomena is just doing all these weird things, walking on water, feeding 5,000 people and stuff like that. Because, if Jesus hadn't done that, you never heard of the guy. And that's what's happening here. They're just doing these weird things to get you to go, what? There's those UFOs again. What's going on? And they want you to think. They want you to elaborate. And when you're in awe and curiosity, which is what they're causing, that's when scientific investigation takes place. If you're not in awe and curiosity, you're just going to sit there and watch TV and eat potato chips. That's all you're going to do. And so we realize there's something going on. And thank you, Bob, for what you do in terms of getting the message out. And hopefully I've sort of added something to somebody's life, and we can go from there.
Oh, you have, mate. What upcoming research or projects are you most excited about for the future?
I don't really travel like to the United States. I wouldn't dare go in the United States because I've been refused entry over an honorarium 20 years ago. I don't want to end up in one of the camps. So I don't really travel. I don't really do that kind of stuff. I'm just sort of working on my books. The next book I have coming out is about a trans-channeler from 1847. Exactly the same. People don't realize this. Exactly the same time as the Communist Manifesto. That was the materialistic worldview. Was 1848. This guy published his book, 1848. He was a trans-channeler, and that's when the Fox sisters started. And people don't realize that the spiritualist Fox sisters, who started all the mediumship thing and all that, the whole spiritual thing, that started in 1848. And the Communist Manifesto. So it was the spiritual versus the material, both started the same year. It was this battle between matter and spirit. It's been going on. So I've written this book, and people, I didn't realize this guy. I mean, I thought I knew a lot of stuff about channeling. I didn't realize this guy existed. His name was Anthony Jackson Davis. And so what I do is I take 39 of his key things about how the world works, and I compare them to modern channelers from today, like J.Z. Knight, Ramtha Bashar, my assistant Desta Barnaby, and I compare them, and it's like 98% agreement between what they were saying 175 years ago and what the channelers, because people say, oh, channelers, they're just making the stuff up. It's like, they ain't making it up, because they're all saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything is one, everything's connected, the world is alive, it's all consciousness and all these kind of things. So I'm doing that one. And then I'm doing some other books on this sort of the consciousness aspect. I'm going to do actually a book between near-death experiences and abduction experiences to show you how close these two are. It's unbelievable, the parallels. It's almost like it's the same thing, just with a different mask on. It's one on the stage is playing an alien, and the other one is playing some Jesus or God taking you in a near-death experience. But it's identical. It's just amazing, and that's what we've got to realize. You see that and you go, oh, so what's really going on? And you start to so I walk around all day and I think about things, and I try to record them and put them out for people to read. And my website has a lot of stuff we try to put on there, the presidentialufo.org, where we've put some articles on Donald Trump, because everybody's talking about, is Donald Trump going to disclose? So I've written a lot on presidents. So we've got the presidential article about what Donald Trump has said about UFOs, about me being called in to help brief him. And I've actually filed an FOIA. Now that's going to take a while for it to come, but I actually filed an FOIA on this briefing. And apparently it's 700 pages or something like that on Rance Priebus, who was his first chief of staff. And there was a briefing being done for Rance Priebus. And so I filed for all the material for that briefing. And apparently I might have hit something. So we'll see what Trump was told. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people get your books?
Amazon, and through, you can see them if they go to presidentialufo.org. They can see the books, and the latest two, as I said, I put out. There's so much material. Was the two books on the big game, which was the Super Bowl idea. And I go through all the different paranormal phenomena, and I compare one phenomena to another, and I start showing you that. Take a look. This is the same. This is the same. This is the same. This is the same. These really weird coincidences where you start to wonder, is this all the same thing? And that's the contention I'm going to make now, is that if you actually go to AI and you actually search AI and you say, what is primary in the universe? Is it fields or is it matter? It's fields. Fields are primary. Matter comes out of fields. Matter doesn't even exist. It's like an electron is a field inside a field, and that's what it sort of goes back. Where these two books that we wrote that go and show you that it's all the same thing. And I look at psychics, I look at mediums, I look at everything, and just sort of cross into. I was going to call it crossovers, but then people wouldn't know what the book is about. But it's basically this idea that there are a lot of crossovers between one phenomenon and the other, and you start really, or you get psychics, like you get people like they say, "Oh, I was abducted." I don't think I was abducted. I just have dreams about aliens, and I say, "Oh, so what was your childhood like?" "Oh, I lived in a haunted house." They start telling you all this weird stuff, and you realize, like, or I asked like the biggest regressionist in the States at one point, Yvonne Smith. I said, "Yvonne, all these people you regressed, abductee people, how many of them have paranormal experiences?" And she starts laughing. She goes, "All of them." So you start to realize it's all the same thing, and that you and I are in the leading edge of this thing. We get to watch this bizarre show every day. It's like a news story every day and a new thing, and we're learning how the world works. And so,
oh, exactly. We are.
Thank you, Bob, and let's do it again sometime.
Oh, yeah. Before I go as well, Paul Sinclair said he's going to get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I've seen him today. He just said, tell Grant I'll be in touch with him about coming on his show.
Yeah, I'd like to interview him. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'd sure like to interview him. Yeah, because that's what people got to listen to. Is that I say to people, until you talk to the people who have the encounters, you're not going to learn anything. You cannot learn anything by watching lights fly around in the sky. It's all very entertaining and stuff like that, but it tells you, yeah, something's going on. Yeah, there's something going on. But you got to start talking to the people who have the experiences, and those people are being totally ignored. They're being totally ridiculed, and the Congress isn't talking to them. It's like they're trying to turn this thing into nuts and bolts and technology. And so I say, I'm not here to help the American military learn how to drop a better bomb on my grandson. There's no way. I'm not. That's not what I'm here to do. And that's what this nuts and bolts is all about. It's military. It's a threat. It's fear. It's like build a better bomb. Let's get control all this stuff. And that's not what we want. We want the other message, the fact that this is going to end up being pretty much a spiritual experience in terms of what these beings are.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Grant. It's been absolutely magic again.
Okay, let's do it again soon.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. My guest on Friday, Sebastian Martin on Friday.
Yeah.
He's never been on the show before. Sounds a really interesting guy.
Yeah.
That'll be 6 o'clock UK time on Friday, because we don't put our clocks forward till end of the month.
There you go. Well, hopefully we get that clock thing all straightened out.
I know.
Yeah.
I know it is. Yeah. Well, yeah. So you take care.
You have a good day.
And you have a good day yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye.